let's talk about why you need one of these. Time is likely the biggest factor as to why you don't homebrew beer as often as you'd like to. I recently asked for your best money-saving tips for homebrewers, and a lot of them end up being great time savers. So I've used some of these money-saving tips to actually have my fastest ever brew day. And this no-chill cube is probably the biggest game changer. So the beer itself was super simple. It was just a smash beer, which is a single malt and a single hop. And I was using Golden Promise along with Citra hops. I've never used Golden Promise, so I thought that this was a great opportunity to get a good taste for it. It's meant to be really balanced and just a great malt for using in smashers. So my grain bill was just one 5 kilogram bag of Golden Promise. And this was the first time that I've ever mashed for just 30 minutes. Normally a mash is 60 minutes, but it turns out that a lot of the mash goes on in the first 20 to 30 minutes. So actually, lots of homebrewers just don't bother with a 60-minute mash. So this was my attempt at cutting down my brew day by 30 minutes by doing this. I used lactic acid to drop the pH to 4.5, which is lower than I normally go for, but a home brewer in the club that I'm in recommended that actually a much lower pH can bring more acid, obviously, and the acid characteristics can make hop flavour more pronounced. So I wanted to give that a go on this brew day. So after a 30-minute mash, I then stirred the mash for 10 minutes whilst maintaining 65 degrees Celsius. This was to try and help extract more sugars. And then after that, I then squeezed the grain bag and got it draining. And I then also poured some of the wort back over the bag so to help extract even more sugars, and also gave it one final squeeze. Once the rolling boil had started, I could start my 30-minute boil and add hops. On this brew day, I use an entire 100-gram bag of Citra hops. Citra is the most popular hop, but I've actually not used it in a long while. I think probably because it's so popular, I wanted to try out using other hops, but I've actually not brewed with it in so long that I'm really keen to use it once again. You know, there's a reason that it's everyone's favorite hop. I added 10 grams of Citra at the start of the boil, another 10 grams 20 minutes before the end, 10 grams at 15 minutes, another 10 grams at 10 minutes. At flameout, I added the final 60 grams of hops and did a 10-minute hop stand with them. I used a mesh bag to add my final hops. This was to avoid having too much hop matter make it into my no-chill cube, as well as not making the beer too overly hoppy, as because I'm adding the wort into the cube hot, it will continue to extract oils from the hops. And so I want to try and control the flavors a bit more by extracting some of the hops from the wort. 10 minutes before the end of the boil, I added yeast nutrients, so to help ensure a healthy fermentation. I also added some Irish moss. This was to help clear out the beer. It was then time to give this no-chill cube its maiden voyage. Using a no-chill cube means that you don't need to use any form of cooling for your wort. So I often use a copper cooling coil, and I didn't need to on this occasion, and that saved me a lot of time and money, as I didn't need to use a load of water, and I didn't need to worry about cooling down the wort for anything between 20 and 60 minutes, depending on your setup and how much wort you're trying to cool. But I didn't have to worry about cooling it whatsoever. I just allowed time to cool it. So to avoid infection, you want to make sure that your no-chill cube is completely sanitized. Just wash it out with Star San or some sort of no-rinse sanitizer. But to be honest, the wort itself, because you're putting it into the no-chill cube hot, it will sanitize it, but obviously you don't want dirt and debris. You don't want to try and accidentally get it infected. To also help avoid infection, when you do add the wort to the cube, you want to be doing it in a way where you fill it as much as possible and then push out any air when you screw on the top so that there really is no space for infection. Once the wort's in the cube, you just need to leave it to cool naturally. So you can do this by putting it in the coldest place in your house, say your garage, or even outside. You probably want to make sure it's covered, but as it is such a well-sealed item, you probably don't need to worry too much about infection putting it outdoors. I waited until the next morning to add my wort to the fermenter, so it had been almost 24 hours since I'd first put the wort into the cube, and I had obviously no signs of infection when I poured it into the fermenter, and then I added my yeast. I then put the fermenter onto a heat pad and also used a blow-off tube, and within a few hours, I saw plenty of activity from the Kveik Lutra yeast. So including cleaning, I would say that the brew day took about 4 hours, and then there was just about 15 minutes of work the next day, which is a huge improvement compared to brew days that have been 6 to 8 hours, depending on what type of beer I've been brewing. I bottled the beer after a week of fermentation, and after a few days, it was ready to start drinking. It's been about a month since I bottled this, so let's give it a taste and see if my shortcuts were worth the time saved and that I haven't just made a terrible beer because of my haste. This came out at about, oh, this is a different beer completely. What have I poured here? I didn't know I had any bottles of this left. Ooh, oh no. I think this is my black IPA. Right, let's try that again. Here we go. So this has come out at about 4%. Its predicted ABV was actually meant to be about 4.5. So as you should be able to see, it's come out very, very clear. So aroma. To be honest, not heaps of aroma. I've not dry hopped this, but I was expecting to smell something more than this. It smells like nothing. Right, well that's a very quick and easy report on the smell. Let's give it a taste. A lot more going on flavor-wise. Very crisp, quite clean and easy on the palate. Yeah, very smooth and easy drinking. You are getting lots of hop depth from the Citra. You know, I put it in at quite a few different times during the brew to try and get, you know, a real variety of Citra flavors in it. Not heaps of malt character, it really is quite hoppy. I think that adding the extra lactic acid has really helped this beer to really have hops that, you know, sing a bit more compared to some other similar beers that I've brewed in the past. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that. That's a very lovely, easy drinking beer. Totally worth all the shortcuts that I did to make it quicker. I definitely think that I'll be brewing many more similar to this because, you know, as much as I like being creative with home brewing and making weird and unusual beers, sometimes you just want something that's easy to drink, that your friends are going to enjoy, and that you can happily have on a Friday night and not have a sore head on Saturday morning with. I really recommend trying out no chill cubes. It really was a game changer for me. It means that I can brew more often, which is a huge bonus for me and any home brewer. You know, the thing with any hobby is that you kind of want to do it as often as possible, but sometimes it's hard to do that. Check out this next video if you'd like to learn more about the Kveik Lutra yeast that I used for this beer.